Welcome back. This is Derek Rogers with another video of Ascending the God Throne. This weekend's coalition event will be Avacyn's Madness. For the bugs list this week, we've got Soft Lock occurs while tokens with evergreen abilities attached are destroyed in any way. Startle Awake Soft Locks while flipped as Persistent Nightmare and is bounced back to hand or exiled while hand is full. I believe that's what the Startled Awake bug is. Squee the Immortal can cause Soft Locks when being destroyed with reinforcements before coming back onto the field. I've tested this multiple times and I cannot seem to get this, but the last I checked it was still bugged. Settle the Wreckage will cause opponents' creatures to deal damage first before converting gems and exiling the creatures. With that being said, I was told that this is the proper way that Settle the Wreckage now happens. It used to just exile the creatures, and then you wouldn't take any damage, and then it would convert gems to their Planeswalker's colors. Now it acts, you take damage, and then they are exiled. Just be cautious if you try running that on any of the take X or less damage nodes. That's why I put that one in there. So we're going to be doing something a little bit differently this week, since there are so many different nodes to cover. There's 15 fights total, so I'm going to try to get through this as quickly as possible. So as what I have done is I have compiled a list of nodes that you can use the same deck as. So starting off, it's going to be 1.1, 2.1, 2.2, 2.3, 3.1, 3.3, 4.1, 4.2, 5.1, 5.2, and 5.3 can all run the same deck. Same Planeswalker, however you want to do it. All of those fights are either take X or less damage, or win the fight with a certain amount of HP. So for a beginner deck or a pauper deck that I have put together, it's with Gideon 1, not the beginner deck there. The deck revolves around this card right here, Dauntless Bodyguard. While this creature is on the battlefield, your first other creature gains prevent damage. We have Aerial Responder, who is a 3/4 flying with Defender and Lifelink. Once the Bodyguard is on the field, you will have him to block for you. He'll have prevent damage, so he'll be able to stop everything. We also have Relentless Raptor, which is a 4/4 Defender with Berserker. So if he's on the bottom, then he will be able to berserk into them and still have prevent damage. And then he'll also be able to defend if he's on the bottom as well. We have Cast Out. When you cast the support, target creature is disabled until this support cycle is destroyed. Gateway Plaza. When this support enters the board, drain 4 mana from your hand. If you can't, this support loses 1 shield. At the beginning of your turn, convert 2 gems to your Planeswalker's colors for each gate you control up to 6. We have Farm. The next creature your opponent controls that attacks is destroyed, then the support is destroyed. This has an Aftermath ability, which puts an activated gem onto the field to the backside of this card market, which is you discard 2 cards and draw 2 cards, so it's just a form of card draw. Gideon's Triumph. When the first creature your opponent controls attacks, destroy that creature and the support. Partner gain 5 life. The partner isn't important, we're not running any Vanguards in this deck. Sunset Pyramid. At the beginning of your turn, you draw 1 card, and this support loses 1 shield, so this is just extra card draw. Bright Climb Pathway. At the beginning of your turn, convert 2 gems to white. This is also a land forming card. which has an additional effect. if you make a horizontal match, which is create a Grim Climb Pathway token, which is convert 2 gems to black. Not really important. Try not to hit that, actually, if you can. It's really just for the white conversion. And the last spell, the only spell in the deck, is Staggering Insight. Target creature you control gets +2/+2 and gains lifelink. That creature gains enchanted. When this creature deals combat damage to your opponent's planeswalker, draw a card. Just more card draw and some lifelink to keep your health up. For a little bit of a better collection, you could run something like this with Tamiyo. And this has Angel of Grace, which gives you and your creatures prevent damage. So as long as you can get this thing down and then keep them on the field, then you're good to go. Yeah, Stitch in Time, gain 1 extra swap. If there are 10 or more blue gems, gain 1 extra swap. If there are 10 or more red gems, gain 1 extra swap. Approach of the Second Sun. This is our source of damage. It's going to be our win con. You gain 7 life and your opponent takes 7 damage. Then you gain X life and your opponent takes X damage, where X is the number of copies of this card in your graveyard multiplied by 7. Angel of Grace. When this creature enters the battlefield, your creatures and planeswalker gain prevent damage until the beginning of your next turn. When this creature dies, exile this card and gain 4 life. Rishkar's Expertise. X gems are converted to green gems, where X is the amount of cards in your hand multiplied by 4. Hour of Promise. You convert 15 gems to green gems. If 3 or more desert spells are in your graveyard, you summon 2 4/4 zombie tokens. Nisa's Renewal. Convert 20 gems to green and gain 30 life. Prism Away. When any player landfalls, the first creature your opponent controls is disabled until the beginning of your next turn, and you draw 3 cards. Rajmi Eternity's Crafter. This is what keeps the loop going. Whenever you cast a spell, support, or creature, fetch the next card in your library. Expansion. This will give you a full copy of Rishkar's Expertise to keep the loop going. Something I did notice during my testing is this card right here. You draw 3 cards, Reason. The flip side, Believe. Aftermath, the first creature in your library is moved to the battlefield. If this goes in before Rishkar's Expertise, it will make a copy of the backside, Believe. My assumption is because it doesn't have any casting mana cost. So I believe that that's why. I'm not sure if that's the accurate way of if it's supposed to happening or not, but it does. Another idea, if you wanted to run it, or if you have it, is this card right here. Killer Instinct with Angel of Grace as the only creature, and then you can just keep summoning. Each turn you'll get an Angel of Grace, and you will always have prevent damage. As long as Killer Instinct will stay on the field, you'll always have prevent damage. And the last deck, you could also just run a very, very quick deck to not take any damage with Huff Deploy. And then I just have a bunch of supports that will prevent a bunch of damage. You got Insidious Will. When your opponent casts a card, destroy the support, and the opponent's card is destroyed. Its effects do not trigger. Gideon's Intervention. While this support is on the board, if your planeswalker or any of your creatures would take damage, this support loses 1 shield. Gideon's Defeat. When a creature your opponent controls attacks, it is exiled, then you gain life, and this support is destroyed. Omniscience. Each card in your hand costs 0 mana to cast. When you cast a creature spell or support, this support loses 1 shield. Emrakul the Promise, then. When this creature enters the battlefield, each card in your opponent's hand costs 13 more mana until the beginning of your next turn. And each creature your opponent controls on the battlefield is disabled until the beginning of your next turn. Deploy the Gatewatch. Fetch the first 3 creatures in your library and place them on the battlefield. Samut, Voice of Dissent. Activate 2. The first other creature you control gains double strike until the end of your turn. While this creature is on the battlefield, each creature you control gains haste. God Eternal Ronas. When this creature enters the battlefield, double the power of each other creature you control until the end of your turn. When this creature is exiled or dies, if 3 or more cards named God Eternal Ronas are in your graveyard, return it to the battlefield, then reinforce it 3 times and exile all cards named God Eternal Ronas from your graveyard. Hazoret's Undying Fury. You fetch the first 4 spells in your library, reduce their cost to 0, and each card in your hand is fully drained of its mana. This spell cannot fetch other copies of itself, so this will only fetch 4 copies of Deploy the Gatewatch. And the last card we have, Thematic Compass, which will always, running Karn, it will always flip to this side, which is Spires of Araska. At the beginning of your turn, convert 2 gems to loyalty gems. While this support is on the battlefield, your opponent's first creature has its power reduced to 0. At the end of the opponent's turn, if they control a creature with power equal to 0, this support loses 1 shield. This is what I like to use on the very, very high HP bosses because it's just a one-shot. You set up your damage, you set up your no damage, your I Will, your intervention, your Gideon's Defeat, and then you just keep spamming your first ability. Try to get yourself a Hazoret's Undying Fury, and as soon as you play one of them, it's game over. It'll one-shot any opponent. And I'm going to show you one more Teferi deck that you could use, which works really, really well. I've ran this many times in many different events. I've ran it on Nodes of Power that take no damage. I've ran it on the HOD no damage node. I've ran this deck a lot. So it starts with Deploy the Gatewatch, fetch the first 3 creatures in your library and place them on the battlefield. Archangel Avacyn. When this creature enters the battlefield, each creature you control gains prevent damage and reach until the beginning of your next turn. When a non-angel creature you control dies, this creature transforms, which becomes Avacyn the Purifier. When this creature transforms to this form, your opponent and each creature your opponent controls take 6 damage. You could also run Angel of Grace over this. I just prefer Angel of Grace is probably slightly better because it gives you prevent damage, where this only gives your creatures prevent damage, but it has a little bit higher damage output. Decimator of the Provinces, which gives all your creatures haste. When this creature enters the battlefield, each creature you control gets +4/+4, trample, haste, and berserker. Omniscience. Each card in your hand costs 0 mana to cast. When you cast a creature, spell, or support, this support loses 1 shield. Blue Sun Zenith. Draw X cards, where X is this card's stored mana. Then give those cards X+4 mana. Isolate. Exile the creature your opponent controls with the lowest cost. If you can't, exile the opposing support with the lowest cost. Swords to Plowshares. Exile target creature. Its controller gains life equal to that creature's power. Strategic Planning. Pick one of the next 3 cards in your library, then destroy the other cards. War of Invention. Fetch the first support in your library and place it on the battlefield. Emrakul the Promised End. When this creature enters the battlefield, each card in your opponent's hand costs 13 more mana until the beginning of your next turn, and each creature your opponent controls on the battlefield is disabled until the beginning of your next turn. I also like this deck for any type of cast X or less supports, because you're only running 1 support, and you don't even have to play it. You can just play Whir, which will fetch Omniscience, which doesn't count because it's summoning a support and not actually casting one. So it works really well for that too. Thanks for watching part 1. I hope it helps.